Welcome to Ghosts and Grit.
Alrighty. Mike Leum, how are you, sir?
I'm fantastic, thank you.
Right on. Okay, so for people listening, Mike Leum is a friend of mine. Been friends for a few years now. And Mike is a man of many skills and one of the most unassuming, you would never know who was standing behind you in the grocery store kind of guys. Mike, you are... Well, what is your... Like, whenever anyone asks me, like, what Mike does...
You know what? Guess what? My kids can't even answer that question.
Yeah, you work for LA County Sheriff's Department. You're one of the you're kind of in charge of the. How does that work? I never understood the structure.
So I
of
have
it.
a couple of roles with the LA County Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
My day job that pays the bills, I am a civilian manager in the Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
Title of assistant director. So literally, I'm, pounding a keyboard.
Okay.
So that pays the bills. I've been doing that for 20 years. For 30 years, I've been a volunteer search and rescue team member that I'm still currently doing also.
Okay.
So you got both those things happening at the same time. And one of my functions at my day job is overseeing, besides the Reserve Deputy program, overseeing the entire search and rescue program.
Okay.
For the department.
So you wear many hats.
I wear a couple.
Okay, so how does it work that you are a manager, a civilian employee at the Sheriff's Department, but you're also a reserve at the Sheriff's Department?
So we actually there's a few of us in that same role. We have some civilian employees that are also reserve deputies on the side. And for me, it's very simple. There's definitely a line in the sand where, when I'm doing rescue stuff, mostly it's Friday night to Sunday night because that's when people are getting in trouble.
Yeah.
And I only work my day job Monday through Thursday. So very seldom do I get called away from the office to respond to a rescue. But luckily, my employer is very understanding should that happen.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Have you ever is it literally sometimes you're in the office, you'll get a text, hey, we got someone's missing, and you just have to go check in with your boss and be like, hey, I'm out?
Yeah, it's just a simple matter of throwing him a text and, letting my captain know, hey, this just went down. And I respond from the office, which you would think is a very extended role, but many times I've been like first on scene, and
wow.
So it's kind of crazy. So
what's what drew you to wanting to be a reserve and do search and rescue? So
my interest was not necessarily to become, a reserve deputy sheriff. My interest was to do search and rescue, and it was back in the late 90s. There was a missing Boy Scout, Jared Negretti, up in San Bernardino Mountains, and I wanted to go help find his kid. There was a big media push, and I wanted to strap my boots on and go look for him, but I realized I didn't have the necessary training to do it well and do it right. So that set me on a path to finding out more about search and rescue. And then I found out, well, it's done through the Sheriff's Department. So I happen to live near one of the busiest teams in the country, so I ended up joining them 30 years ago.
How many rescues have you participated in?
It's somewhere around 1,500.
1,500, wow. And that's alive, people that you found alive.
Well,
or
that's,
just in
that's 1,500 missions.
Missing. Okay, 1,500 missions. Okay, what and how many? I know people don't really know this, but isn't LA County Search and Rescue one of the most active search and rescue teams in the country?
Last year we had 714 missions countywide. So
wow,
I would think that puts us pretty high on the ladder for number of missions.
Yeah. How many teams are there?
We have 8 teams, and it goes all the way from Palmdale, Lancaster to Avalon, over in Catalina.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot of folks.
And it's a lot of different geography.
And so you have to kind of oversee from like a managerial position, kind of make sure all the teams are squared away and doing their own thing.
Well, luckily, we have amazing people working for us, both full-time and volunteer. So you're familiar with our Air Rescue 5 program.
Yep. Yeah.
And so we work very closely with them. And it's a fantastic relationship because, in my opinion, it makes us the premier rescue program in the country because Air Rescue 5 I mean, you've been on Air Rescue 5, you know
Yeah.
what that's all about. And so working in conjunction between the air and the ground, I mean, I tell people all the time, if you're going to get hurt in LA County.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I do find it like a very unique thing, that relationship, for the fact that, you know, a lot of, well, all of the search and rescue is either volunteer or reserves, but they're working so closely with Air Rescue 5, which is like they're the Delta Force of the Sheriff's Department.
100%.
And so it's kind of strange that, you know, you've got reservists ultimately working with the tip of the spear guys.
Which is funny because if you talk to them, they'll say that they exist to support us on the ground.
Wow.
And, you know, in my opinion, it's like the other way around. It's like, no. We're the ground response to you guys.
Yeah.
And plus, they pluck us out of the middle of nowhere, usually saving us a 10-hour hike back.
Sure. For people that don't know, you want to explain a little bit about the structure within the Sheriff's Department of, you know, where Air Rescue 5 lies and actually what it is?
So Air Rescue 5, it's called 5 because there's 5 people staffing it. You have 2 pilots, and then you have a crew chief and 2 medics in the back. And the crew chief and medics all come from the SWAT side. So you have to go through SWAT first, and then you get hand selected for working on Air Rescue 5. So the unit is called Emergency Services Detail, and they are the Navy SEALs of law enforcement. SWAT trained, dive trained, mountain rescue trained, and there's pretty much no emergency that they don't go to. Could be everything from an active shooter to a dive fatality at Catalina to somebody hanging off a cliff.
Wasn't there something in Catalina recently? Like it was an active shooter scenario, and they had to I think, didn't they like all pile into the helicopters to get out there?
Yeah, and that's another thing Air 5 does is they will transport a tan team, a green team of SWAT operators to an active shooter.
Wow, that's pretty cool. What's their average response time?
Well, Air 5 spends its day up in the mountains, and from that location, they can be anywhere in the county within 10 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. I mean, patrol cars can't even do that, you know, and I'm 5 minutes away from a police station in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
How come? Okay, so you got into search and rescue because you saw this kid went missing, this Boy Scout. And so you just started looking into search and rescue and like, here's what I want to do and why. And had you ever been curious about law enforcement before then, or it was purely just because of search and rescue?
I would just say law enforcement supporter.
Yeah. And I mean, what's all right, if you were going to do the elevator pitch to someone to come like, hey, come do this, like, what would you say to them? Because most people at this stage, you're like, why am I gonna do that for $1 a year?
Yeah, that's true, but you can't put a price on, the after effect of how you feel after a successful mission.
Yeah.
So it's obviously not about the money.
No.
But along with the successes, then you've got also the tragedies that you got to deal with, and there's plenty of those. Luckily, our department has a very robust mental health program for all employees and volunteers, and so we push that out on a regular basis because we see some pretty awful things, and sometimes you don't process it too well, according to my wife.
I don't know, do we want to go down that road, Mike?
Well, I have no problem talking about it. I mean, we've seen a lot of stuff, done a lot of stuff, and usually the spouses can tell if you're processing it well or not.
Sure. And
to this day, as we're sitting here, my wife doesn't think I've processed the response to the fires yet.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot going on there.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to kind of talk about like what were you doing during the fires? Because you sent me a video and you were like driving through the fire.
Yeah, it was crazy. I've over 30 years I've worked a lot of fires, but this conflagration was something like I've never seen. So we initially got sent over to the Palisades fire, and we're pulling people out of their houses, telling them they got to get going. Fire's here, and it got to the point where a matter of 3 minutes probably would have made a difference between us not making it out and the people we were saving not making it out.
Wow.
Because we got these people packed in our car, and sent them down the road. And we were behind them.
Was this up in the Highlands or down in the village?
It was up in the hills of Malibu.
Okay.
And on the way down, the fire, storm, and smoke got so bad, I could not see the road. And those, as you know, those roads are narrow and windy.
Yeah.
All it would take is just to, go straight for 2 seconds too long and you're over the side. So I had to open the door and look down at the roadway to make sure I could see the yellow line, which told me I was in the middle of the road.
Wow.
So it was a little hairy.
I mean, it's funny with that when the fires were going on. I was thinking, it was so big. How do you even train for that scenario? And is there training for that scenario?
Well, it's one of those things where it just goes back to your basic level of, security, knowing that you can handle a lot of different situations and relying on your partners, which is absolutely critical during times like that.
Yeah.
And I was with a couple of people that are, super strong, and I'd go through hell with them, which we pretty much did. So it's nothing you can really train for because of the enormity of it.
Yeah.
All you can do is react pretty much. And, we were running all over Malibu. We were responding to calls because people did not evacuate once the order was given, which is expected. But then 2 hours later, guess what? 911 calls. Hey, I'm trapped in my house, surrounded by fire. I can't get out. Well, it would have been real helpful if you would have left 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
But everybody that we were tasked with going to get to, we were able.
You got him out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We ended up doing CPR on a guy on PCH and a burn victim who it appears probably fell down the cliff after running away from his house. And
Wow, I didn't hear about this.
Yeah. Just recently found out he didn't make it.
Oh man.
So that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But we did whatever we could.
How many rescues did you make during the fire?
We didn't keep
Just ridiculous amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then while we were working that fire, the Eaton fire,
which is kind of your AO.
Yeah. Which is why we got pulled off of the Palisades fire and sent over to the Eaton fire. And it was the same thing there. The only difference being the incredible density of those neighborhoods. I mean, you've got houses like right next to each other. Whereas in Malibu, you'll have a house and a half acre or an acre to the neighbor's house.
Yeah.
In Altadena, I mean, it was, right next to each other.
Yeah.
And, we were pulling people out of their houses, and 2:30 in the morning, a guy walks out on his driveway wearing a bathrobe and slippers. Houses on both sides of him are on fire. He looks at me and says, "Is a fire truck coming?" I said, "No, there is no fire truck coming. Get in your car and leave right now. And I'm not going anywhere until you do."
Holy shit. Had he like been sleeping? Did not know, or like just?
I think some people just don't understand. Maybe
they just put their head in the sand.
How everything works. I mean, I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. I just think a lot of people don't know. Like in Malibu, those people, when we told them they had to leave, the fire was on the ridgeline, and by the time we're driving down the street, it's at the street, blowing across the road.
Wow. So
it's just one of those things. You just can't understand what fire does in 100-mile-an-hour wind.
Yeah. Did I know it's kind of confirmed now, but like, were you on the ground when it was like firefighters were like, "Hey, we have no water"?
So we did come across that in the Altadena fire. We were up in one of the neighborhoods, a little higher elevation, and we pulled up to, I believe it was some Forest Service firefighters. And kind of saw them standing around. We're like, "Hey, what's up? Need some help?" And they're like, "We got no water."
Wow.
Okay. Well, and I don't pretend to know the ins and outs of how or why that happened, if it should or shouldn't have happened. But bottom line is, with that kind of a firestorm, I don't know what our water delivery system looks like. I would think it'd be really hard to get
keep
water
up with it. Yeah.
to every fire hydrant.
Yeah. I was watching some pundit, some news person was like, talking about the Palisades fire, and they were like, it's right on the Pacific Ocean. Like, why couldn't they use the ocean? Like, why couldn't they pump up water from the ocean? But I found I was looking into it, and I didn't know this, and you might, but you can't use seawater to fight fires because essentially it kills the soil. So if you douse everything, if there's a forest fire and you're dousing it with seawater, it's ultimately going to kill the chance of anything ever growing back.
That makes sense.
Because of the the mineral content in it and the salt and all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting little. Oh, okay, I didn't know that 3 weeks ago.
But it seems like there should be a way to desalinate it.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
they do it in a lot of other countries.
Rick Caruso was talking about that.
Yeah, and he's a big supporter of law enforcement. That guy.
Huge.
Hasn't he? Were you telling me something a while ago that he donates something for search and rescue or some? I forgot. I don't know. Maybe I'm just piecemealing stories. Was the whole team? Did everyone get activated during the fires?
Yes. So I contacted our emergency operations bureau as soon as the fire kicked off, and I said, hey, remember, we have 200 search and rescue personnel waiting, to be activated, and they said activate them. So I activated the whole county, and whoever was available rolled, code 3 to Lost Hills Sheriff Station, and from there we were mission tasked to go to the hills of Malibu and start working.
Yeah, that's crazy. What was the hardest thing for you about the fires?
Probably just not being sure of who's out there that needs help that we don't know about, because comms were down, people weren't able to communicate, which was part of the issue, right? You had relatives like on East Coast saying, they would call 911 and it would come to the sheriff's department. It was like, hey, I can't get a hold of whoever, and so we'd get an address to go check it, and most of the time they were gone, or a neighbor was able to tell us, oh yeah, they took off, with their kids. So comms were bad, but we knew that there were people that needed help. We just didn't know if we were getting to everybody. Yeah. And that's kind of frustrating, because you want to help whoever needs help.
Yeah. Did you come across any of the arsons or looting or any of that shit?
Unfortunately, no. I wish I would have. But I do know some people that did come across some of them. Yeah.
They handle business appropriately?
It didn't work too well for the looters.
Yeah. Yeah, my friend who lost his house in Malibu, in the Palisades, they got called to evacuate, and as his street basically evacuated really quickly because he was right in the flats right behind the mall. Mm-hmm. And he saw dudes literally as cars were pulling out, leaving, guys running in and looting houses that quickly. And the same in Hollywood. When the Hollywood fire started, the moment they told people to evacuate, guys gangs on scooters were coming up through these neighborhoods and just started looting.
It's a wonderful world we live in.
Right? Well, my thing was, I was like, why the hell did they not perp walk all these guys that they arrested for arson and looting? Line up the world's media out front of, the crypto, stadium.
Foreign countries do it all the time.
Yeah, and just bring one out. This is Larry Shithead. This is Freddie Fuckface. Here's what they did. And just publicly shame them. I think we've got to bring back public shaming to such a excruciating level.
Be careful, because they might use it as a badge of courage.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, they might. Yeah, a bit of clout. Do you ever get tired of it?
I don't. It's just something that burns in me. And I mean, you and I, we've deployed internationally.
Yeah. We've got a bit of history. We'll talk about that.
Sure.
All right. So, some of my listeners know, I've been a reserve cop for, a period of time in my life. And there was I was doing some work with Mike with LA Sheriff Search and Rescue. And when the war in Ukraine started, I got a call from a friend of mine, or I reached out to a friend of mine who was working with a nonprofit that was trying to evacuate some kids with disabilities who.
And prior to that, you and I had already started talking about,
Yes.
like, man, this sucks. You know, these poor people in Ukraine getting hammered by Russia. And so that conversation was already started.
It was going back and forth. And yeah, I just kind of the things aligned, and we, within a few days, we flew to Romania. And then
I will still never forget watching you try and order McDonald's in a Romanian McDonald's with whatever broken Romanian you could come up with. It was hilarious.
Yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, we ended up spending like a week right on the border of Romania and Ukraine, and went into Ukraine a few times together, and it was not as active as I think we wanted it to be. We didn't get, we didn't accomplish the mission, but it was very eye-opening.
Yeah.
Just to have.
Well, and actually, I think it helped both you and I realize, okay, well, next time, I'd rather do this, or we'll plan for that.
Yeah.
Because that deployment helped me just 1 year later when I took a group to Turkey after the earthquake, and we did rescue work in Turkey.
Yeah, because that was pretty remarkable what you put together.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I don't know how or why, but things just seem to like fall into place when they need to.
Yeah.
And the Turkey deployment was actually perfect, seamless, and then most recently in going to North Carolina after.
I didn't know you went. I didn't know you went out there.
Yeah, I assembled a team. We went to North Carolina and did rescue work out there after Hurricane Helene.
Wow.
And that was another time when stuff just like fell into place. I mean, connections that needed to happen that I had no way to make happen, they just like fell in my lap. So
these trips you're doing, are they? How does it work? Is it all self-funded, or is it?
Because our department can't necessarily fund a mission to go outside of the county, because to be honest, it's not necessarily what the taxpayers are paying taxes for to support the sheriff's department. And so even when LA County Fire sends a USAR task force, that's through FEMA and USAID. That's not actually part of the county.
It's probably not going to be through USAID anymore.
Well, I have my own opinion about USAID that I shared with you earlier. But so, yes, first thing I do is I call a very small group of people, and I say, hey, if I can pull off something to go to this particular disaster, are you interested? And, of course, everybody says yes. Then the biggest challenge is funding, and I've been able to find, funding for each of these deployments separate from the department. These are just donated funds. And then logistics, always a challenge. It's like, okay, well, how in the heck are we going to get there?
Yeah.
And each time that's been solved either by organizations or people.
Yeah.
So, things they've really lined up well, and we've been able to do a lot of good. And I'm going to try and drag you back into some of that.
Yeah, I think it's time. I need to dust off the boot.
I know you're a busy guy. You got a big family,
a
gorgeous family. But at the same time, I know you have this burning desire to help people.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's anytime I've done any rescue work, aid work, it's always been incredibly fulfilling. Like, I get it. It's like this, you get this like adrenaline rush that you can't get in any other capacity.
And that's true, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like adrenaline activities, but the act of actually rescuing somebody and snatching them from the jaws of death, I mean, I don't know, you can't beat it.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's kind of cool that, Search and Rescue adopted like the PJ quote. It's like, so others may live. Mm-hmm. And it's such a cool, I don't know. I've always been attracted to that part of it.
Well, and as you know, you and I both like Isaiah 6:8.
Yep. Send me.
Yeah. To the point where you suggested naming our future nonprofit.
Yeah, our future, the one that we've sat around in the.
Well, I mean, we're effectively doing it.
Yeah.
Just without the actual umbrella.
Yeah.
Of the
No,
organization.
it is really fulfilling work, and my hat's off to you that you just have committed. I mean, you've committed your entire life to this, Mike, and most people don't. Most people do that time, and they're like, all right, I'm good, bye. Like,
Well, I figure God instilled the will in me,
Yeah.
and the department has given me the skill. So I guess it's up to me what to do with it. So
Yeah.
I want to do whatever I can.
Do you have a like an out date for yourself, or are you just gonna just keep going?
I mean, I don't want to be one of those guys, that goes out with his boots on
Yeah.
kind of thing. But at the same time, I mean, like you, physical fitness is a major part of my life every day.
Sure.
And so as long as I can, not just do it, but excel, then I'm going to keep doing it.
Wait, what's been one of the weirdest rescues you've ever done? There's got to be one where you're like, oh yeah, there was a guy wearing a clown suit and hanging upside down, by his toes.
There are so many.
Yeah.
So close to Los Angeles.
It's true.
We had a fraternity that took their pledges up into the mountains, which, okay, that's fine, whatever. But they had them all dressed in high heels and skirts and dresses.
Okay.
Yeah. So they needed rescue. So that's a little different.
Yeah.
We've rescued a group of bartenders who got up into the snow and ended up getting stuck, and we had to rescue them out of the forest. And I think one of my teammates may have got a phone number. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But there's, being this close to Los Angeles, we get it all. Which is part of what makes it so interesting.
Any famous rescues?
Well, famous. I don't know. I don't know what a famous rescue would.
Didn't you help Jay Leno with a flat tire once?
Oh my God. Well, it had nothing to do with rescue.
Hey, he had a flat tire. You helping him?
Well, I tried to help him. It was on Riverside Drive, right by Forest Lawn.
Oh, it's a very dangerous part of town. Very dangerous, rugged terrain.
And I saw a Model A, a Model T off to the side of the road, and some dude underneath it. And I'm like, oh man, that sucks. The guy might need some help. So I pull over. As I'm walking up, I could tell it was Jay Leno because he loves to go for drives up in our mountains every weekend, just about. And so we're very familiar with him. And so as I'm walking up, I'm like, holy cow, this is Jay. And so I identified myself. I showed him my badge, and it's like I didn't want to think I was like some,
psycho trying to steal his.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Jay, it's, Mike Leum from Search and Rescue. Do you need any help? And he's like, oh, no, I'm good. Thanks a lot for stopping. Okay. Oh, he's a super good dude. One of his episodes, he had our rescue team on.
Oh, really?
And we put him over the side and
that's
actually did a rescue of him.
Very cool.
It's very cool.
Fun times. Do you ever get nervous?
Nervous. I mean, there's been only a few times I've come back and told Nancy, like, that could have been it, that one.
I'm sure Nancy loved hearing that.
Well, she always wants me to talk about it, I'm like, okay, you want to hear it? Here, here it is. But as far as nervous, not really, just because, we train in so many different scenarios and so many different environments. And, we train for the low frequency, high risk. For example, ice climbing, climbing frozen waterfalls, which you have done with us, and you did amazing.
Thank you.
That is one of those things where, it doesn't happen all the time. But guess what? One of the only fatalities of a search and rescue team member in California in decades was in 2019. Tim Staples from San Bernardino Search and Rescue fell on the backside of Mount Baldy on the ice and ended up dying from his injuries.
Wow.
And so I preach all the time. It's like the low frequency, high risk activities, those are the ones that can kill you.
Yeah.
And so we try and train, for those.
Yeah. What's the most kind of common call out you get?
Well, our bread and butter is motorcycles that go way too fast up there, crash over the side, and or like high speed vehicles, Porsches and other cars. I rescued a guy, crashed his $450,000 Porsche. he still doesn't have all the sensation in his legs. So
Did he go over the side?
Yeah, he crashed over the side, ended up upside down. I crawled into the car with him and had to manage getting him on a backboard, and then Air Rescue 5 showed up, and so then luckily I had a lot of help. And
How far down was he?
not terribly far. He was like 50 feet.
I think people don't realize it's legit mountains just north of, in LA. There's the Angeles. It's Angeles Crest, right? Or is it
Angeles Crest is a highway.
Yeah,
it's the Angeles Forest.
Yeah.
There's places where we have 1,000 feet of cable on our winch trucks. There's been times that we've had to add rope to the end of that.
Wow.
To get to a car and a victim. So
over 1,000-foot drop.
Yeah, it's steep and deep up there.
Yeah, it's rugged too.
Yeah,
it's like, I mean, I didn't know until I started coming on ride-alongs with you. It's real mountains.
Yeah, and actually the county line between us and San Bernardino goes right through the summit of Mount Baldy. And Mount Baldy is 10,064 feet.
Wow, I didn't know that it goes right through the summit. So
right through.
So it's split between LA County and San Bernardino County?
Yes. The only reason San Bernardino gets the majority of the rescues there is because that's where people park on the San Bernardino side.
Okay.
So that's where the calls get generated. But as far as our daily week in, week out stuff, it's motorcycles and cars that go too fast up there, think it's a racetrack. And I like to say that they run out of talent and then they run out of road. And then they crash.
Not fun. That's like the last place I would want to get in a crash at. Well, actually, probably would be. I know like one of you or your guys would come to rescue me, but yeah.
Well, and the funny thing is, with the improvement in car safety, we're getting a lot more people surviving these crashes. So fatalities, while they still happen, are rare.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah. It was funny, like, when I was a little more involved with search and rescue and coming around, like one thing that would often weigh on me is like, man, I don't know like how I would feel about the kid stuff. Seeing kids get hurt, seeing kids in car accidents, because I know it's a common thing, and I mean, that's got to weigh so heavy on you and the guys.
Those are the tough ones, and I've had a couple in particular that still I can't talk about them.
Yeah. It's like it's funny. Friends of mine who are firefighters, they all tell me it's like, no, dude, burning building all day long doesn't freak me out, nothing. Because like anytime there's kids involved, it just folds them up like a lawn chair.
100%. And that, one of the usual questions I get is like, well, what's your best rescue? It's like, okay, that is the most general question you can ever ask anybody who does this. But it was kind of funny because my best was also my worst. So we had a car that actually was a truck that went over the side of Angeles Crest Highway. It went down a slope but got pinned by a tree, luckily, because it stopped it from going any further. Inside was a mom and dad, their daughter, and a friend. And everybody got out except a friend. And she was pinched in between the seat and the roof. And so me and John Rodarte, who you know from Ukraine.
Dr. John,
and he and I jumped into that truck, and he was face-to-face with her, evaluating her medically. I was trying to free her and gain some space. Out of nowhere, somebody dropped a Sawzall, so I'm busy, trying to saw this thing. And then Doc says, hey, we're losing her. And so topside connected a cable to the truck and then pulled it enough to get it on all four wheels. And then that caused her to squirt out the bottom. And so Doc and I started working her up CPR. I mean, in the litter, up the hill, into a truck, onto Air 5. The medic said, just keep going, keep doing it. So we did CPR on her all the way to the hospital in the air. We get down into, and we had lost her once or twice en route, in flight, because she was on the monitors. And then we get down, we're literally like on top of the gurney, going down the hallway to the emergency room. And then get her in emergency room, and then they, fill her full of drugs, and she came back. She had a rhythm, and so we're all like, yes, high five, everything's cool. Well, she ended up passing away like 3 days later.
Oh.
And they ended up, the family had to basically, seesaw life support, which was awful, but, we gave them the opportunity to say goodbye.
Yeah,
That's about
absolutely.
And she donated a bunch of organs. And so that one sent me to, talk to a couple of professionals.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't, yeah. I mean, fuck. If anything's going to do that, it's something like that.
Yep.
Do a lot of people have a hard time with that side of search and rescue? Like, is that kind of the most common thing where people will hand over their credentials?
Not necessarily to that extent, but, doing it for 30 years, I remember back when it's like, hey, just, suck it up, Buttercup.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
Go
It
take
sucks.
a walk.
Yeah. And, whatever. Well, that's probably not the best way to try and deal with it.
Yeah.
And so luckily, like I said, our department is big on mental health, which basically got born out of the number of deputy suicides that occur every year.
Yeah.
I think, I could be wrong, but I think we average probably like 11 deputies that kill themselves every year.
From the sheriff's department?
Yes.
From just LASD?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
I had no idea it was that high.
Yeah. And that's an awful number. One is an awful number.
Yeah.
But so, there's been a growing trend in a very good direction towards mental health for deputies and any affected personnel.
Yeah. Do you just think it's due to the stress of the job, or do you think it's kind of a number of factors?
Yeah, it's usually a number of factors. It could be addictions, it could be debts, it could be bad marriage.
Yeah, it's tough. Is there like mandatory kind of check-ins with the mental health teams?
No, not really. But my captain in a meeting just yesterday let everybody know that he will be mandating people that he deems that it would be beneficial that they go talk to department psychologists.
Wow.
He just made that announcement yesterday.
Okay, well that's cool. He's
Yeah.
just taking charge.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Unless you're just that weird guy and there's nothing wrong with you, you're just weird and he just starts picking on you. Hey, weirdo, go talk to the shrink.
And because, the other thing too is if you can address it early, then obviously you're not going to have that crisis intervention at the last moment.
Well, it's so freaking important, and it affects mental health issues. It doesn't care who you are, where you're from, what your socioeconomic background is. It can
In fact, my captain described it yesterday to the crowd very succinctly. He said, "We're all sponges, and so we go around and we collect everybody's bad stuff, and so we suck it all up." Well, a sponge, once it gets saturated, it's done. It's no good. So occasionally you got to wring out the sponge. So whatever that is, whether that is, physical activity, hitting the gym, talking to people, talk to a professional, you have to do something to wring out the sponge.
Yeah.
So you can continue doing what it is that, you're meant to do, which I thought was good. Another analogy I've been told about is the coffee cup. Each traumatic event is like a drop of coffee in a coffee cup that's maybe higher than you can see. So you never know like what drip is going to take it over the brim.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it's a big deal in our department and it's a good thing.
Yeah. Something that I always found interesting was, when I was more active doing reserve law enforcement stuff, was, you'll meet guys who've been like working midnights for 10 years, 12 years, whatever, like double digit years, seeing the craziest, most horrific things. And that's just 365 for them. And it's funny. It's like when you compare it to, say, guys in the military, they'll go do 6 months overseas, maybe a year if it's really, full scale war. And then they come home for at least 6 months, a year, 2, 3, whatever. But with cops, it's 365.
Well, I had a sergeant yesterday after our meeting came up to me and said, dude, I was rolling around in those fires. That was the craziest thing I've ever seen. But, for you guys, it's like, that's just kind of what you do. I'm like, well, yeah, kind of. So, I mean, at some level, you probably get, I'm not going to say immune, but you do get used to dealing in different environments.
Yeah, like being used to that kind of extreme intensity.
Do you ever tell a joke and just hear crickets? Yep, I've been there. Not every joke delivers. But you know what always does deliver? Harry's. I've been using Harry's razors and they're seriously the best. The weighted handle feels solid, the blades are super sharp, and they last way longer than the expensive brands. No more overpaying for bad shave. And their body wash, mwah, it is amazing. The redwood scent is my favorite. Smells fresh, lathers great, and actually makes showering feel like a treat. And the best part? It's all affordable. Customizable delivery options for scheduled refills as low as $2, half of what you pay with the other big brands. So get the shaving products that always deliver. Get started today with a $13 trial set for just $3 at harrys.com/jack. That's harrys.com/jack for a $3 trial set. One more time, that's harrys.com/jack for a $3 trial set.
How do you think it manifests in you? Or have you kind of figured out a way to channel it, to kind of purge it when you can?
I don't know. I tend to get a little emotional, and it's rough.
Yeah. Do you find kind of a physical practice helps, working out?
Yeah. Well, I mean, working out's, what we do every day. Yeah. So, to stop doing that would be bad.
Yeah.
So you got to make sure to like keep doing the good stuff that you normally do. Avoid, any other temptations you might have to help solve that situation, like excessive drinking or, some of those other things. But, try and be focused on healthy things.
Yeah.
And family, hanging out with family. My wife knows it's like, all right, boys, we need to probably have a weekend where, you can go surfing with Dad or, do some fun stuff.
Grounds you a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard with that balance though. Kind of when just in any capacity of life. It's like, when am I overdoing it? When am I, where am I kind of in that danger zone? Am I not taking care of myself? It's, these are constant conversations I think people got to have with themselves. Doesn't matter what you're doing.
And I mean, there is no under-emphasizing how important like support is.
Yeah.
Whatever your support network is, usually it's a spouse and kids. Like during the fires, I was gone like 12 straight days. I'd come home for like, a few hours, maybe to get a nap and a shower and some food, but then I'd turn right back around. And while, I mean, that's kind of like what we're programmed to do, well, the spouses, they have to live through that too. And they're not necessarily programmed for that. So my wife was absolutely amazing. She made sure, like, whatever laundry needed to get done for the next day got done. Meals got made. And so it was amazing. And there's no way I could have pulled that off by myself.
Yeah. That's, behind every great man is a even greater woman.
A greater woman.
Yeah. Because you got into this, you were in the grocery business, weren't you?
Yes. Yeah.
And so did you owned a grocery store?
My family owned a small chain of independent grocery stores. And so, I was, working 6 days a week, in the grocery store. But at the same time, I started doing the search and rescue stuff. And my kids were little. When I first approached the team, Nancy was pregnant with our oldest son. And of course, she's looking around like, oh yeah, this is nice. Yeah, he won't be doing this. And I came home like 2 days later saying, hey, honey, I signed up. She's like, oh, great. But it's a journey. And I tell people all the time, it sounds really cool and everybody wants to do it. But when you find out what's involved, it's like, okay, this is not a hobby of the month.
Yeah, no, it's a lot.
It's a lot. I mean, everybody's got to be emergency medical technicians. We require everybody to go through the reserve deputy process. and then you have to get trained on all the mountain skills. So if someone tells me today they want to do this, and they're committed, it's 3 years before they're actually a full team member.
Yeah.
So it's a journey.
Yeah, steep hill to climb in
Yeah.
more ways than one, for sure. Yeah. The I think it's funny how little most people know what a reserve is in law enforcement. It's such like I think it's such an interesting I don't know. I think it's an interesting part of the system. The fact that you can just be a normal run-of-the-mill citizen, doing a normal job, working at a grocery store, whatever, and you can go through a process to become a sworn law enforcement officer.
Well, it's it could be a number of factors. Some people maybe always kind of wanted to be that and do that.
Yeah.
So this gives them the opportunity to do it on their own time. When you're a reserve deputy, it's not like you're in the National Guard. You don't get ordered to show up. It's like you tell your station, it's like, hey, I can work like every other Friday night or, whatever your schedule allows. So it's very user-friendly that way. And by and large, our reserve deputy cadre has got a higher education level than regular deputies. I mean, a lot of deputies become deputies right out of high school.
Yeah.
And they bypass college and, they say, well, I'll do it later on the job. Well, they end up working a lot of overtime, making a ton of money, and never seem to have time to actually make that happen.
Yeah, go get a bachelor's degree in the process.
Yes, exactly. And so by and large, our reserves are highly educated. They all have, outside jobs, families. So they're very responsible. They don't want to lose their house. They don't want to lose their family or their job. So, they stay pretty much out of trouble.
Yeah.
Once in a while, obviously, we'll have people make mistakes and, we may end up having to terminate somebody. But by and large, our reserve cadre are very responsible individuals.
Are you the one that has to terminate him?
Yeah.
Wow. That can't be fun.
Well, no, it's not fun, but necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's like such a key thing about upholding standards.
Yes.
It's like in not just physical standards, it's moral standards and
Yes.
making sure because police they carry a lot of power. One man with a badge can completely change the course of your life.
100%.
And I think that is something that at least I've seen in my experience people don't respect that they have that power. I've seen cops do some stuff where I'm like, oh fuck, and I think it's good that you guys will drop the hammer when needed and maintain that standard.
Yes. And luckily we don't have to do it often, but when we do, it's usually necessary.
Yeah. Should we talk about why I couldn't be a reserve?
It's your show.
So yeah, I went through the process to become a reserve at LA Sheriff's Department, and I didn't meet those high standards.
Well, let's just say that some people don't have an appreciation for people that have life experiences, where those life experiences created who you are today.
Yeah.
Which I think is one of the most outstanding people I've ever met.
Oh, I appreciate that, Mike.
So, but, hiring standards tend to differ. They don't get updated very often. When I came on, I think a single use of marijuana was probably zero tolerance.
Yeah.
Now we literally can't even ask the question.
Oh. Oh, really? Because that was one of the reasons why they wouldn't have me. Yeah, no, I got shit canned because of my misspent youth. Yeah, but it was all before the age of 18, where I was like, but nothing would be, even if I'd have been arrested for all that stuff, it wouldn't be on my record. Yeah. Well, hey, standards are standards, I guess.
Well, yeah, you and I have both been through that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
but standards change and people change.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe I'll, every 10 years seems to be like when I try. So I did. So it was.
Are we due?
You would nearly do. We nearly do because it was let's see. First time I applied was like 2013. No, it was maybe before. No, it was about 2013. Yeah, because I had just got married to my first wife. And then, maybe I do it by wife. No, I'm kidding. Harry, kidding.
Whoa,
Yeah, it was a
whoa,
joke. That was a joke.
Well, we're done there.
Yeah.
You have an amazing wife. And
I do. Yeah.
Beautiful family.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so do you. Yeah, your wife's, and you've got 2 badass sons.
Man, I can no longer keep up with them.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing, I guess. But they're amazing young men, and that is all you can ask, right? Just be good humans.
One's a cop and is the other firefighter?
No. So one's an officer, and the other one is a director of human resources.
Was he an EMT at one point, or one of them was an EMT?
Yes. The one who's currently an officer was an EMT also. Yeah.
Very cool.
And he was working in an ambulance and wanted to go fire, and then went law enforcement.
Right on.
You want to talk about the first time we met?
Yeah, let's do that.
Hey everyone, it's Jack Osborne here. This episode is also sponsored by me. If you're into exclusive content, behind the scenes looks, and deep dives into my world, check out my Patreon page. Join me for special episodes, personal updates, and even some short ghost stories and more. Head over to patreon.com/Jack Osborne and become part of the community. See you there.
So I was voluntold to meet with you.
Yeah.
I was told by executives, hey, so Jack Osborne wants to get involved with the department, and he likes search and rescue. I'm like, that's nice. No, you're going to meet with him. I'm like, God.
You're like, not there.
No, because I mean, you've probably picked up on this over the years. I'm not a fan of the usual like Hollywood types.
Sure.
And unfortunately, I had labeled you, as such. And so I came home and I was bitching up a storm. And my wife said, you're not even giving this guy a chance. I'm like, no, I'm not. And so the next day we have our sit down. It was you, me, and my captain, maybe.
Yeah, it was Captain. Yeah, it was Captain. I forget.
Thrall?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I go in there, just chewing the inside of my mouth. And we were in there quite a while.
Yeah, like an hour and a half.
And everything coming out of your mouth sounded like really good. I'm like, dang, maybe I was wrong. No, I couldn't have been wrong.
I'm a great judge of character.
It kept going and going. And then finally, I threw it out there. I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking, okay, smart guy. But I said, okay, next week I'm leading a group to go climb frozen waterfalls. Sounds like you're the mountaineer kind of guy. You interested? And you go, oh, hell yeah. And you went.
Yeah, we had fun.
You crushed it.
It was a good trip.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And so...
You knocked yourself out.
Oh, damn. That was that trip.
Yeah. It's all right. I had you on a good belay. You were good.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Mike was climbing a frozen waterfall, and someone was way above him that we couldn't see. Knocked a huge, softball-sized piece of ice and just nailed him on his head. And he just went limp on the rope. And I'm like, Mike. I was like, I know I don't really know you that well, but I got you.
And yeah, I think somebody, said, just start lowering him down. And as my head started hitting the wall of ice, I kind of came to.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Good job, buddy.
Hey, I got you. I got you. Yeah, but it's funny. It's like you and I, we kind of orbit, each other, and we always get into these kind of weird scenarios. Wait, but you didn't. I know you didn't. I don't want to end without talking about your trip to Turkey, because it is remarkable what you guys did.
Yeah. So when the earthquake hit in Turkey, I immediately thought to myself, we've got the ability to help people over there. I know we do. And so I made, a series of phone calls, and everybody said, yes, count me in, if you can pull something off. I called a really good friend of mine, Bruce McCrae. He was a senior VP at UPS. I thought they got a lot of planes. Maybe we could jump on a UPS plane and get over there. And so I told him, what we had. He's like, all right, give me some time. In the meantime, I had no connections. I had no nothing. So I contacted our department, international liaison unit. I said, hey, you got a Turkish consulate in Los Angeles? They go, yeah. So gave me the information. I contacted them. I said, I got a group of people that are willing to go over there, help your countrymen, hopefully rescue some people. And they said, well, that is amazing. And so in the meantime, Bruce got back to me. He's like, all right, Turkish Airlines is going to sponsor 7 round-trip tickets. I'm like, sweet. So, and we had a little bit of money that we had to use for hotels, car rentals, stuff like that. But literally, I sent an email to my chain of command. I said, because we were going as private citizens. We were just going because we didn't figure the department could sponsor it.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even ask the question. I just said, here's what we're doing. Here's who's going. I'll be back whenever. So we're sitting in the airport, and one of our chiefs calls me, and this is a guy I've known for 30 years. He was a former medic on Air 5. Now he's a chief. And he's like, hey, Mike, since you guys are doing this on your own, it's all bought and paid for, what if we make it an official mission? That way, at least you guys are covered for workers' comp in case you get hurt crawling in one of these collapsed buildings. I'm like, well, that'd be amazing, sir. And he's like, all right, let me work on it. And then within literally minutes, he sent up the flagpole and came back down. He's like, done. You guys are on an official department mission.
Wow.
So that was huge.
That is huge.
I mean,
yeah, because that didn't happen with the Ukraine trip.
No. And so the fact that the department was sanctioning an international rescue mission, to my knowledge, has never happened.
Yeah.
So that was a real big shot in the arm. What we weren't prepared for. I mean, obviously we were prepared for all kinds of trauma, which we saw. All kinds of devastation, which we saw.
I'd never seen any of those buildings come. That footage
miles
was
and miles and miles.
insane.
Hundreds of miles of collapsed buildings. What we weren't prepared for is when people saw the patch on our shoulder and said, Los Angeles County Sheriff. I mean, it was amazing of how it made the locals feel and all of the other personnel that were there to know that America was standing on the ground with them, shoulder to shoulder, doing bucket brigades, getting rid of debris, whatever it took to help rescue these people. We didn't really think we were going to be, emissaries for, the United States of America, but we were.
Were you one of the only American teams there?
So, funny story. When we landed on the ground there, we in Adana, we had no plan. I saw a tent that said International Rescue Team check-in. So I walk over there and I said, okay, LA County Sheriff Search and Rescue checking in. I knew they didn't have us. But I'm like, yeah, LA County Sheriff Search and Rescue. They're like, some dude on, clicking on a keyboard. He looks up. Do you mean LA County Fire? Because they were already there. I'm like, no, LA County Sheriffs. They're like, I don't have you in the system. I said, my government, your government, go figure. He's like, I'll just put you in. Perfect. So that got us connected to AFAD, AFAD, which is their version of FEMA. And so that's how we got our daily missions. I was presented with a map of Turkey, basically saying, hey, where do you want to go? LA County Fire and their USAR team is up here. If you want to, co-locate with them. And I'm like, well, who's down here? And they're like, oh, not a lot of rescue teams are going there because that's on the border with Syria. I go, oh, how's the damage down there? Oh, it's bad. Okay, we'll go there. So that's where we ended up going, right on the border of Turkey. And
how many days post-earthquake was this?
By then, it was probably day 4 after the earthquake.
So
we
you got
landed.
that quick.
Pretty quick. And so, apparently a lot of countries pulled their teams out of that area because of security concerns. But I saw Turkish military like on every corner, strapped. And I never once did I feel, concerned for our safety.
Yeah.
But it was amazing because on day 1, we were given GPS coordinates and a woman's voice was heard yelling for help. So we're like, okay, cool. And we had rented three cars. And so we go zipping through these areas. And I swear it was like you're on a movie set for a war in Beirut or something because everything was
just rubble,
collapsed and just rubble. Yeah. The building standards there are unbelievably poor. I'm hopefully better now. But if you can imagine this, you build a one-story building, you put a layer of dirt, and then you build the second story on top of that, and another layer of dirt. So all of these buildings, it was like they were on ball bearings. It was ridiculous.
Whoa.
And so no wonder everything fell to the ground.
So they weren't connected.
No,
That's so weird.
and the bricks that they used, they're like honeycomb.
Yeah.
So they were like hollow. I mean, you could punch your fist through it.
Wow.
So that on that first day, we responded to this 10-story apartment building that collapsed. Woman's voice heard yelling for help underneath. And, there's dozens of people already working the pile. We get in there, start working the pile. And then all of a sudden, a male voice is heard in the same pile. And so now we have 2 rescues, happening simultaneously. After about 4 hours, we get the female out and rescued. And then probably after another 4 hours, we get the male out. Turns out it was mother and son.
No way.
Yeah, they were just in different rooms and, were separated. And so that was pretty crazy.
That's what. And this was like 5 days after the.
This is probably the 5th day after the earthquake. And,
Were they in pretty bad condition?
No.
How were they not dead from dehydration?
Well, pretty much if you've survived that long, it's probably because you created some type of a collapse space that you're able to survive in.
Yeah.
Which also probably kept them warm because it was 30 degrees at night.
Yeah.
Every night. It was cold. And so the fact that they could survive just with the temperature was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so then after that, then we set about the rest of the week working at various locations, but primarily trying to help a family uncover their grandma who was on the first story of an apartment building, but there was a basement, and so that first story became the basement. And so we spent days trying to get to her, not knowing if she was alive or dead. We always assume people are alive until proven otherwise, whether it's in an earthquake like Turkey or if it's up in the mountains.
Yeah.
We always assume we're going for a live victim. And then during that rescue operation, we got pulled away because there was a voice heard down the street. We go down there. Now, keep in mind, this is like 10 days after the earthquake. 10 days. 17-year-old kid still alive in a pile of rubble. And so we help our international partners rescue that kid out of there.
You got. I didn't know you got 3 rescues from that
Yeah, we
trip.
had 3 life saves.
Wow.
And of course, people in our rescue program, they're like, yes, we should get, USAR training and get, USAR light frame structure certified and all this. I said, well, the training is important for sure. I'm never going to say we shouldn't get training.
What's USAW training?
Urban search and rescue.
Okay.
So, there's different levels of urban search and rescue training. But the other thing, too, you have to think about is once you're trained to a certain level, then you have to follow those standards and those guidelines. So talking with some of the LA County Fire USAR people that were in Turkey, they told me they spent days in their hotel rooms because either the structures that were collapsed were just plain not safe to enter, period, based on their
Training.
search and rescue training and guidelines, or there were security concerns. But mostly it was concerns for the operating environment. And, I mean, it sounds kind of funny to say, but we were not encumbered by what has been. So we had not been trained to those standards. Therefore, we could operate wherever we felt comfortable. And before we entered any structure, we all kind of huddled. We started each day with a prayer. And then we also said, if anybody feels uncomfortable going into any of these areas, say something, we'll stop, pull out, and reevaluate. So
Almost not having the training makes you a little more fast and loose.
we had flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it worked out very well.
Yeah. Man, that's wild.
It was wild. It was life-changing.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. The man, it's such a I mean, you must have come home just feeling just on top of the world.
Yeah, it was so grateful for the opportunity to go over there and help people, which really got me going on the whole like international response thing.
Yeah.
And
See, I'm surprised at this stage with the kind of the attention and the success from, whether it was Ukraine or Turkey or wherever. It's a good look for the department.
yeah,
Which
I'm not going to deny. I'm sure, the Turkey thing. The department definitely took a risk. I mean,
big time. But everything's a risk.
Exactly. But based on the incredible success of that mission, when the response to North Carolina came up last year after the hurricane, I did the same thing. I got a team together, self-funded, got the logistics all set, and then we, in fact, a good friend of mine was the one who basically said, "You guys need to be out here." He was in South Carolina, and he said, David Robinson, he funded us to go over there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he's chairman of Morgan Creek Productions, and a very good friend of mine. And he's the only way that we would have been able to get out there, because he said, "I'll sponsor 3 of you guys if you can get out here." I'm like, "We're there." So, and then connections got made. We got Jaguar Land Rover North America gave us a fleet of Defenders.
Really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Dude, I dream big.
Yeah.
Even I couldn't dream that big.
So you just landed and they were like waiting for you?
Pretty much, yes, as a matter of fact. Because Land Rover has a driving...
That's some James Bond type shit.
Dude, they have a driving school in Asheville, North Carolina.
Okay.
And obviously the school was wiped out. I mean, they couldn't, have the school. And so the instructors approached their executives about like, hey, we got these cool vehicles. I'm sure they can get used for some good stuff. So they hooked up with the local rescue team that we embedded with, Buncombe County Rescue Squad. And Dave Robinson came up and he like jumped in the trucks with us, and he was like right there with us. It was awesome. And so we were told when we landed, look for guys with the blue shirts with the Land Rover logo. I'm like,
okay.
Oh, okay. And so I see these guys in the blue shirts. I'm like, they're like, yeah, come on. And we go outside and there's a whole fleet of Defenders.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my God. And having these guys, the instructors and the trucks, that's made all the difference.
Yeah.
Because we went into these briefings every morning with FEMA, and the New York City Fire Department was basically running it with FEMA. Well, we're looking at a map, and these guys have no local knowledge. Our drivers from the driving school had all the knowledge.
Yeah.
And the trucks to get you there. Because a big old fire truck's not going to do too well going down some of these roads.
Yeah, of course.
And so they would identify a community that hadn't seen any emergency, personnel. And so our drivers would say, okay, well, that bridge is out. But if you take this little truck trail up over here and you go through Billy Bob's backyard, you can get there. So it's like, you can't buy that.
Sure.
So
it's funny. Do you feel like every kind of international kind of mission you go on, you're kind of putting away information for like, okay, when I do this on my own, this is how I would do it kind of thing?
Well, we're to the point where we are doing it on our own.
Yeah.
I mean, Turkey was on the seat of our pants, and, North Carolina, pretty much the same thing. Things just, fell into place.
Yeah.
And, somebody upstairs made a lot of stuff happen.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, Mike, I could literally sit here for hours, but I'm hungry and we've got some tacos to go get.
I will never turn down tacos.
Yeah, right. I'm going to take you to the best place. It's a really good spot up the street. We're going to go.
All right.
All right. Hey, thank you so much. I've wanted to do this for a while, and I'm glad we did it. And
I'm just glad to hang out with you.
Yeah.
So if I have some half of an interesting story to tell, I guess.
You've got more than half of interesting stories, Mike. Alrighty. Well, folks, thanks for listening. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. And if people want to follow you, where do they find you, Mike? If they want to follow you.
I'm on Instagram.
Okay.
Just my name, Mike Leum, Leum.
Okay.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on X.
Montrose, LA County Search and Rescue, Instagram.
So on X, I'm there at RescueMan, ResQMan. We have, obviously, the Sheriff's Department webpage for any information about becoming a reserve or doing search and rescue.